Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So as I've promised, here is my in-depth breakdown of each of the 4 scenes that I saw Friday at the London Comic Con. Now if you're new here, please consider subscribing, as I might have even more exclusive stuff towards the beginning of November. So yeah, stay tuned. But without further ado, let's jump right into scene 1. So with that being said, let's now start breaking down each of these scenes. And we will start with the Women's Circle initiation of Egwene.
Be strong.
So just as you can see, this scene begins just before Nynaeve has a few private words with Egwene before she throws it into the river. What we get is a much wider view of the cliffside that Egwene and Nynaeve are on. Now, interestingly, there are so many women here at this ceremony that are attending that we had no idea were there from what we had previously seen. I am talking maybe 10, 20, 30 women on the cliffside. They're obviously a lot further away from the cliff to begin with. You will see Nynaeve. She's kind of in the middle of the gathering, because obviously she's the wisdom of Emond's Field, so she's given a speech out to the members of the Women's Circle. I can't quite remember what was exactly being spoken by Nynaeve, but it was along the lines of, essentially, this is a great, joyous day of Egwene becoming a member of the Women's Circle, kind of. It felt like a, how can you say it? A coming of age, so to speak, for the women in the village. And this is a big moment for them all. So yeah, after that she had a bit of encouragement to Egwene before we see the scene where she gets thrown into the river. Now, this is where it gets really interesting from everything that we've seen previously, especially in the first teaser trailer that we saw. Essentially, every single shot of Egwene in that first teaser trailer where she gets thrown into the river, in the river stream where she's lying on her back, that is all part of the scene that I saw. So essentially, the next part of this scene is after she gets thrown into the river by Nynaeve, she's in a panic. Obviously, as we can see from the first teaser trailer, she's really struggling in the current, or the tide, or whatever you want to call it, within the river. She's really struggling. She starts to get a grip on the situation, well, as best as you can when faced with that. Then you see the scene that we see of the overhead shot, where we see the river, carrying on, where people thought these were from 2 different scenes, when in fact they're from the first one, well, from this clip, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos. We get a lot more of a view of these, I believe it's the Social River, more of it upstream, where they filmed these scenes. And then we get to that scene where she's now floating in the river and she's very calm. It's just like I thought was happening in this scene that I explained previously. She's very calm, she's now relaxed and just letting herself be kind of, moved along with the natural flow of the river. She's now kind of calmed down with it. And then finally we get to like the shore of the end of the journey. And she is kind of, she's grasping for air. She comes out and then she grabs onto the, how can you say it? The shore and the pebbles on like the kind of sandy or pebbly beach. I can't quite remember what exactly the beach looked like because I only saw this scene once actually in my time there yesterday. But yeah, and that is essentially the first scene that I saw. Out of the 4 scenes, I would say this would be almost the most unique and the one they've had a lot of creative freedom in how they wanted to go about it, because obviously we don't know a lot of the customs from the 2 rivers in terms of what they would entail from the books, unless I'm mistaken in my thinking. And so they had a lot of scope and range in terms of movement of how they wanted to go about showcasing what happens in the women's circle and how the initiation and subsequent ceremony is handled. I actually also believe the scene we see where Rand and Perrin are in the Winespring Inn and then Egwene walks in is on the same day this ceremony takes place, and they're all smiling because they know obviously Egwene passed and is now a member of the women's circle. So yeah, very interesting. The tone of the scene itself, it's very calm to begin with and kind of joyous, and then we get that frantic passage of Egwene, trying to claw her way out of the river, and then we get another kind of tranquil moment as she floats down to the shoreline. So yeah, very interesting. Next up was the scene that we've all seen collectively, and that's of course the Winespring Inn. Really, I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time on this particular scene as there's not a huge amount of new parts of the scene that I saw. It was literally maybe a minute or two at max. It starts off exactly where we see the Winespring Inn scene that we got already from Amazon Prime. We then get to the end of that scene, and now there's an extra passage where Rand and Perrin are conversing and talking with themselves about Moiraine after being revealed she's an Aes Sedai. And as you can see, the inn itself and the people there, they were chatting amongst themselves, wondering why an Aes Sedai had come to their village in the middle of nowhere. And it's kind of the same thing with Rand and Perrin. There's like this, as far as like the way they're speaking and talking about it, they're kind of wondering why she's there. I believe they kind of mention sort of the things where they say, or the kind of fairy tale sort of tales they've told as kids. They mention how she can do certain things. She yes, this very much gossiping. I cannot really quite remember exactly what was said in this scene, unfortunately. But I hope you get the general gist. They're just talking with each other, thinking, why is she here? What do they want with this backward or kind of very quiet part of the world where nobody ever visits, really? But then after this happens, Nynaeve interrupts them and kind of scolds them, just in the manner you would expect her, kind of basically saying, don't be so silly, or you're being very stupid in what you're saying, kind of just like in the books, which is really nice to see. And of course, as I mentioned, we do see Moiraine and Lan be taken upstairs into the inn to their room. And that kind of is where where it ends. Yeah, I really don't have a lot more to add to the scene. It wasn't anything particularly interesting that I can remember from it. I would say it was the most boring of the four, as obviously I had seen the vast majority of it. So yeah, there's that. So the third scene now. This run is my favourite, for obvious reasons, of course. It's the attack on Winternight, but also more importantly, the Alfor farmhouse also gets shown in this scene as well, which was very good to see. I was extremely happy to see that. So where to begin? Well, to begin, the scene starts with Moiraine and Lan. Now, they're quite a way away from the village, much further up in the mountains, and they've kind of got like a vantage point of a bird's eye view. It starts with Moiraine on her own, with the two horses, and then Lan comes into shot. And he states to Moiraine that there's a fade very nearby with dozens of Trollocs. They have a bit more of a dialogue. What I can remember that really stood out for me, and most importantly, was Lan asks Moiraine, do you know who the dragon is? I believe those were his words. If not, I will just edit this video and put the correct words in right now. To which Moiraine replies that no, she doesn't know which one of them it is. So as we all knew and expected, she has an inkling of who the dragon is in the town, but not necessarily maybe what they look like, or that sort of thing. Then we get like a cut of the fade from yesterday in the bonus content footage that we got from the Amazon Prime website, where you see the fade on the mountain. That is a shot from the scene that I watched. Now they, or the fade and the Trollocs, they're positioned even further away from the village and higher up as well. So much further away from the mountain. So next we get a kind of jump skip, or just a fade into the village now. And it's battle time and the celebrations have begun. We see the women dancing with one another and the men. And then we cut to Perrin dancing with Layla. Yes, Layla Ibarra. I am sure they are married. Maybe I'm really missing the mark, but it just felt like that. It felt a little more maybe intimate than just your sister or whatever, like it's a new sister. So that was interesting to see. I think that was the first time any of us will see Layla, or at least for me personally. Then we get another shot of Egwene, and she's dancing there. But interestingly, not with Rand, as you might expect. She's dancing with another young man. Who that is, off the top of my head, I cannot really remember. But this is when the scene really starts to take off. So obviously, as you could expect, the atmosphere is joyous. There's a lot of celebration and happiness and exuberance. And then all of a sudden, while we are watching Egwene and this boy dance, he kind of goes and he spits blood out, and he falls into Egwene's, into Egwene. And now Egwene is taken back by this, and she's really startled, and she just doesn't really understand what is going on. And she goes, "Are you okay?" Something along those lines, because she doesn't understand why he's just started doing, coughing blood and falling into her. And then she looks down, and what she sees, I think, will have everybody extremely happy. Well, at least the vast majority of us. A Trolloc has speared, I would say, maybe a scythe, or obviously a weapon of his or theirs, through the chest of this man that Egwene was dancing with. Now, they don't, cut anything here. They've made it as gory and as bloody as you would expect a scene like this to be. The man's blood is over the weapon. Now, this is where it really goes off. Egwene is terrified, petrified. She screams. And then kind of the shot pans up from this poor man's open chest, now covered with a weapon and blood, to him. And then I believe that Egwene lets go of him, and he kind of falls back. And then obviously behind, we get the reveal for the first time of what a Trolloc looks like. And then she's like, "Wah!" like this. And she screams. And then all of a sudden, like, the Trollocs are coming in from everywhere. There's shots, just being cut and flying of different parts of Emond's Field, of Trollocs kind of entering from all sorts of angles. So it's like an ambush. They've gone around the whole village, and they're coming in from all sides. We see loads of, people screaming and running everywhere. It's very much commotion in the village now. And the direction and the photography and the way that they've filmed this is very much playing into that. You will need to watch this scene multiple times to catch everything that happens in, because the shots are very quick, they get cut, you go to another scene. And so we are no doubt, and I know this for myself personally, I've missed stuff within this scene. And so you're going to have to watch this a lot. Like I said, the atmosphere has completely changed. It's now absolute panic. There's guttural sounds coming from the Trollocs everywhere. You can feel they've really got their blood flowing because of slaughtering all these innocent people that can't fight back. Interestingly, there's different sorts of Trollocs as well. It's like, I believe there was a really short Trolloc in one particular shot, and he's on the floor eating one of the villagers. So that was kind of cool to see. They're not all going to be these huge Trollocs that stand 6 feet or 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 feet tall, whatever they are, over the villagers. Maybe it's because he was on the floor and he was like obviously on all fours eating this person. Egwene obviously is a focus in the scene, as is Nynaeve. Nynaeve actually rescues Egwene in one point. Yeah, and then they kind of just run off with each other. Then we get like a cut. This is kind of all out of sequence in a sense from here on out, because like I said, it happens so quickly and everything's in such a huge commotion, and you really get that sense of it. So I might have certain shots out of sequence from this point on. We get to see Matt now. Now Matt and his sequence is quite interesting for the fact that the way it's played out is this excuse me, it's as if he is almost invisible to the Trollocs, or they just don't pay him attention. He's walking through everything that's happening. There's like Trollocs attacking the person within reaching distance of him on multiple occasions, and yet they never go near him in a sense. He's literally within arm's reach of death or getting attacked, and they just don't seem to do it. He kind of just has a way of kind of moving around the scenery and the carnage that's unfolding. He's making his way to his house. He goes into his house. His family are in there and they're all alive, and wow. We also get a cut now to Perrin. It's the one we saw in the bonus teaser trailer, or whatever you want to call it, from yesterday, where we see him like with the lightning and he's in the blacksmith's forge area. That's all we get of Perrin from what I can recollect. But yeah, absolute carnage and screams are going on within the scene and everything. And then we get kind of I believe the last scene within Emond's Field itself is of Egwene and Nynaeve, and I believe it's Semburi. I believe he's been attacked and wounded, obviously like many of the villagers, and they kind of rescue him and kind of pull him along on the floor to like a safe area. And then Nynaeve, being the wisdom, starts tending to him and bandaging him up, and kind of just is trying to reassure him, say, yeah, your wound is okay, it's okay, you're going to be fine. But he's not. He actually dies within like 10 to 20 seconds of the scene. And then we get this really changing vibe and atmosphere of like, it's kind of, you know how you get like a fade or the lowering of sound, and you now no longer can hear everything as distinctively? It's like that. And then Nynaeve is surveying the surroundings and everything that's, going on. And it's like a despairfulness that she now is seeing everything that's happening. And she's now got a moment to kind of catch her breath in this carnage. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the Alfor farmhouse. Yes, I got to see this scene. It was crazy to say the least. So we begin, like we've seen in the Shadowspawn little teaser we got a day or 4 or 5 ago of the 30-second clip. It kind of begins there. We have Rand and Tam in their house, in their farm, in a room. And then we get that scene in that Shadowspawn trailer where the Trolloc, who I presume is Narg, bursts through the door. And this is the only Trolloc that actually enters. So whether there's any Trollocs outside in the vicinity, I don't know, but I would presume that there are. But we do not see anything except this sole Trolloc. So I believe the team have said we're going to focus on Narg and give him a much more extended scene in terms of a fight. There's no dialogue from this Trolloc or Narg if it is Narg. But yeah, so he bursts through the door, but both Tam and Rand are ready and waiting for this to happen. So I feel they've kept the scene along the quarry road where Rand sees the Fade for the first time, and Tam, obviously with his experience of being in the army, he knows what Fades and Trollocs look like, so he he's certain Rand has seen what he's seen. And so, yeah, Trolloc bursts through the door. Tam has a spear like on the wall to one side. He's obviously grabbed that. He spears the Trolloc. Now, this doesn't really do much at all to the Trolloc. It literally kind of maybe flinches, if that. It hardly pierces the Trolloc's skin. Rand has grabbed his bow and arrow. He starts letting off a few, shots into the Trolloc. Literally, it's even less impressive than the spear that Tam did. The fight ensues. It's very close quarters. There's not a lot of room between Tam, Rand, and the Trolloc, so it's very difficult to kind of get away from one another. So it's a sense of kind of claustrophobic. So you can't really have a sort of natural battle you would have. And I say that for an interesting reason, which I'm about to get to. So then kind of Tam is flung, I believe, into a wall, not very heavily, but then it's a focus now on Rand. And he jumps on the Trolloc's back, trying to make sure he doesn't kind of kill his dad in this particular moment. The Trolloc, at this time, he literally picks Rand up, flings him into the wall, and he goes flying into the wall. He's out of action for the foreseeable future. Things shatter in the wall. I would not be surprised if Rand has got maybe bruised ribs or broken ribs. Definitely that happens, and he's most likely not unconscious at this very moment. In the time that happens, Tam's managed to get away to like the bed in the room, get the chest from underneath the bed, and he pulls out his heron marked sword. Now, a really cool thing has been added. There's a heron on this particular sword. So we've seen the promotional footage of this heron marked sword from the Amazon Prime team maybe a year or so ago now, and there was no heron marked, and everybody was disappointed, as well as myself. Well, there are there, but it's not in every sword. So then Tam obviously unsheathes the sword out from the scabbard and basically taunts the Trolloc, and now it's a fight between the Trolloc and Tam. Now, I believe at this moment Tam goes into a sword form. It's quite distinct because you can see he's gone from this kind of mad kind of attacks on the Trolloc, and he's now got a moment to compose himself, and he goes into the sword forms. He manages in the battle that they have within the next 30 to 40 seconds possibly, manages to land 4 blows on the Trolloc. These obviously get a reaction out of the Trolloc. The wounds that are inflicted do a lot more damage now, but it doesn't really slow the Trolloc down. Then after that, the Trolloc flings its sword towards Tam's shoulder. Tam has blocked it with his sword, and he's obviously holding on for dear life, because obviously this Trolloc is enormous in comparison to Tam, and they've made these Trollocs not cannon fodder. You know, like how in other kind of series such as like the Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, in terms of the stormtroopers or the orcs, they literally just get flung and killed off because they're kind of like the lackeys of the bad guys, aren't they? And in this case, the Trollocs are almost the easiest targets from all the Shadowspawn. Well, even though that's the case, they don't come across and they're not portrayed as that. These Trollocs are beasts. You will not be able to bring them down easily. It's going to take a lot of time and effort and manpower to bring a Trolloc down, which I think is a fantastic direction to go with. It means every new introduction of a Shadowspawn in the series will have a heightened edge and tension to it. Because if this is the weakest of the bunch, what the hell are these going to do? Like the Dragtar. We hear a Dragtar in the scene. I forgot to mention that. This is during the Winternight scene from just a little bit earlier in Emond's Field, if I'm recollecting it correctly. You don't see it, but you certainly hear it. And you know it distinctively as soon as you hear it. It's like that cry you've always heard in your internal monologue when reading the scenes. But yeah, back to Tam and the Trolloc. So then the Trolloc was just using one hand, and Tam is using two at this point. So then the Trolloc grabs his other hand, and basically Tam is useless at this point. It's gone into him here. But at this point, I've also forgot to mention he has like a wound on his side as well. So it looks like, for all intents and purposes, Tam is about to bite the dust. And we get a close-up shot of the Trolloc and its face. And all of a sudden it goes... and I presume, arrow has come through its neck or throat. And obviously, Rand has regained consciousness and killed it. Then there's a little bit of a dialogue between the two. In the scene, Tam tells Rand to run, but which he obviously doesn't do. He stays and helps his father. They talk to each other, kind of. I think Rand's saying, "You're alright," and that's it. And then that's the end of that scene. I've spent a hell of a lot of time talking about this. It's nearly 20 minutes, but I remembered and recollected so much from this particular scene, and it just stuck with me. I could just want to spend this much time with you. It was a fantastic scene. The best scene out of all of them, because it was a scene I think we all need to see. And when you guys get to experience this, you will see why I'm so enthusiastic with it. The direction they've gone with how gory and gruesome they want to make this, I think is fantastic. Now, it's not on the level of Game of Thrones, but it's not quite far off of it. There's no like decapitations or stuff like that, but there is, runes and mortal runes. You don't see heads flying off or the kind of mess you see from Walking Dead. Spoiler here, give you a couple seconds, I'm sure you've all seen it, but the scene with Negan and Glenn, it's never to that level of disgustingness, which I'm happy with, to be quite honest. I've had to cut because I completely forgot one particular and important point from the Winternight attack that I didn't put in my initial talk through of it. And I cannot believe I left this out. Crazy. How did I forget? Anyway, Padain Fain is in the scene very briefly. And I have to say, from what I saw, I love what they're doing with the character and how Myers is playing it. It looks so good. So essentially, it's kind of somewhere in the middle portion of the Winternight attack. He's, I believe, either leaning on a house or maybe even on his wagon, his peddler's wagon. Now he's got a smirk on his eye. Just watching the attack unfold. There's either a smugness to his face, or he's smiling or laughing at watching the carnage unfold. And then he kind of just gets up and walks kind of behind and off the scene, off shot. That was a really cool scene to see. I went, oh my god, Padain Fain! So that was really cool. So yeah, I don't know how much we're going to get of Fain in the series. I feel like he's going to be one of those characters that just pops up every now and then and will have an impact on the wider story or arc within the series and this season in particular. Okay, so we're on the final scene that I managed to watch yesterday. Now, this is the aftermath of Winternight. Rand has managed to make his way into the village now, and they're all gathered and they're talking with Moiraine. There's not a huge amount going on. It's more just, them talking with one another and the dialogue, and how the villagers, quite rightly and understandably, they would naturally blame Moiraine for this. They don't understand why this has happened to them. It's never happened. They've never had Trollocs, never seen a Fade or Trollocs in their life. So they cannot quite work out why it happened. So they naturally have to find someone to blame. And who are you going to blame in a situation like that, other than the newcomers and Aerys Sedai at that? So yeah, that's understandable. Rand has a go at her. Perrin has a go at her. Matt has a go at her. He calls her crazy at one point. Literally just goes, "Are you out of your mind?" I'm fairly certain that is what he says. I believe Perrin even has a few lines. And Perrin, as we know, he doesn't say a lot most of the time. It's all kind of internal. It takes him a huge amount of time to, boil his blood and for it to all burst out in one big moment of anger. Even Egwene, to a degree, I believe, is kind of upset with everything that's happened, as you'd expect, but it's kind of towards and guided on Moiraine. But Moiraine obviously explains why it's happened and, you know, more of the reasons behind it. She says, "You're all ganging up on Moiraine, blaming her for everything."
When I stood at a woman with eyes so white she couldn't see anything. Yet still she saw glimpses of the turning of the wheel. The Dark One is waking. His whispers are already in the backs of our minds. But there will be one who can stand against him. The dragon has been born again.
Moiraine says the dragon's been born again. She already states that she knows.
You've fully lost your mind.
Matt says she got mad. Oh, dragged up. See all the trolls coming down from the mountains. This is really good so far, really good. They're all getting gone.
Your life isn't going to be what you thought. You've lived too long in these mountains pretending that what happens in the rest of the world won't affect you. Because you stay. They're after you.
They have to leave because they're after me.
And if you stay here, this is where they'll come. They will leave nothing and no one standing, and I can't do anything to stop them. Our only chance is to reach the right
Man, my arm is getting
the other sisters of the ice and hide. There's no
It's basically saying that all got we get a cut, in a sense, and we see all the villagers that managed to survive the attack. They're crying and hugging one another. Tam's there, he's fine, although wounded, but he's standing on his feet. I believe it was with Egwene's mother, it might have been, I cannot remember. And that you get shots of them on horseback leaving the village. And this is when it's really, really cool. And it's something I'm really happy they've included in this series. It's something we have not seen in a fantasy show before. So I'm really happy with that. Rosamund now narrates as Moiraine, and we get the intro that we get with every Wheel of Time book, where it's, you know, ages come to pass, that passage, and it sent shivers and goosebumps down me. I when I heard that, I couldn't believe that they've included that, and I think it was amazing and a fantastic choice that they did. So it shows there's going to be some form of narration, at least within the first episode, if not moving forward into the remainder of the season. So that will be something interesting to see whether that continues. And then, yeah, basically they kind of just leave the village, and that's the end. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience to be a part of. Really interesting, and just to gauge the general audience from their views, because I kind of stayed for 3 rounds of this, so there was about maybe 16 of us in this little room, or open room I should say, and they were talking a lot about the Trolloc scenes in particular. But yeah, they all seemed very receptive and happy with what they'd seen and were intrigued by it. So yeah. Okay guys, this has been a super duper long video. I hope you've stuck around and managed to listen to what I've had to say. I know I spent a long time, but I recollected a lot, and I wanted to give you as good a understanding of each of these scenes as I could possibly convey to you guys. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Please leave a like and comment down below on anything you want to ask. I can obviously try and then reply to your questions on any of the scenes, on anything you might have been wondering. Thanks for watching guys. I'll have new videos out later this week as well, so I'll see you all later in the week. Have a good weekend.